away. Yeah, in his Chevrolet.
All right, welcome back, everybody. SportsTalk Media Network. Phil Kornblut, Chris Bergen, and Josh Cohen all together. Phone number 888-898-2525. More of your phone calls are coming up. Hear a little bit from Mark Kingston as he talked to the media in Omaha today on a Zoom. We did reached out to him last week, again this week, invited him on to Sports Talk. He politely declined. He wants to move forward, not necessarily look back. So he's basically bidding us adieu and moving on to his new life in Omaha, where in Omaha they did play baseball today. I thought they'd gotten rained out, but you're right. North Carolina, Florida State in an elimination game, and Florida State wins it 9-5. So North Carolina State and North Carolina both hit the road, and coming up, well, it's going to be tonight, Kentucky and Florida, but this is the game that's been postponed till tomorrow morning because of the weather out there in Omaha, which can always be a little bit dicey. With that in mind, we welcome in our good buddy Jason Patterson, who is from here in South Carolina, does a lot of play-by-play and other sports media coverage, and he always goes out to the College World Series in Omaha. Even if he doesn't have a dog in the fight, he's there to take it all in, and he's joining us here on Sports Talk. Jason, how are you, sir?
Doing great, Phil. Always a pleasure to talk with you, and certainly this time of year with the College World Series going on. And as you just documented, everything was rolling right along from a games and scheduling standpoint. But it looks like we got some weather tonight, potentially tomorrow, and we'll see how things shake out from there. But a good tournament so far, strong teams, a lot of interest in the Carolinas as always, for sure.
Yeah, man, and those storms out there, as you well know, they come out of nowhere and they come strong, and because they bring tornadoes and things like that with them out in Nebraska, so they're very much on guard for any kind of very dangerous weather, and they always take as much precautions as possible. I mean, I was at Rosenblatt one year when they evacuated the stadium because of a tornado within 25, 30 miles. You guys haven't had any issue like that, have you?
Nothing serious to that vein. We had the one game pushed back, the Florida game the other night, because there were some tornadoes in the area, but nothing that was effective to downtown Omaha. They looked at the forecast tonight, and it looked pretty bleak, so probably a wise move just to decide to do as much as they can tomorrow. And they've got the built-in – the schedule's a little more condensed still than back when we were at Rosenblatt, as you mentioned, but they still have the Friday built in if they need to push some things, because the forecast does not look great for tomorrow morning either. They're planning on trying to play 3 tomorrow starting at 10 in the morning as it stands right now. And you've got those two first of the de facto semifinals behind the elimination game between Kentucky and Florida. So they'll be very fortunate, let's say it that way, with the way the radar looks right now, to get the 3 games in tomorrow. So it may be a bit of a fluid situation, to say the least, across the next few days.
Let's talk.
Hopefully good baseball.
Yeah, man. Let's talk about the game earlier today. Florida State wins at 9-5, 9-14-0, and they left 14 on base, and 5-10-0 for the Tar Heels. They left 6 on base, and Florida State scored early, and then they had a 3-1 lead. They put 4 on the board in the 5th, kind of opened it up. But North Carolina came back with 4 in the bottom of the inning. That 5th inning must have been a long inning between 8 runs being scored.
Yeah, you know how baseball games can click right along and then run into the pause button, and that's what happened in that 5th. And you mentioned the runners left on. That's kind of been the story for the ACC clubs. You got to remember, when we started this thing, Phil, there were 4 ACC teams, 4 SEC teams, and the ACC really trying to make a case for everybody else to unseat the power, with the SEC winning so many of the recent championships. But the left on base scenario that you mentioned, Florida State was not bitten as much by today as the ACC teams have been. It hurt Virginia, it hurt NC State with the opportunities they couldn't capitalize on, and then North Carolina leaving enough out there today that they're done. So it really comes down to Florida State now, Phil, the only ACC team left. The SEC's going 4-0 against the ACC out here. And Florida State is the only one now that can prevent us from another SEC, all-SEC championship game. Because of the way the bracket breaks down, you're going to have one SEC team in it from that side of the bracket that has only the 3 SEC teams left. But if Florida State can't do something with Tennessee, it's going to be all SEC again. Now, the one thing you got to remember, Link Jarrett not with Florida State, but when he was at Notre Dame, did handle Tennessee on Rocky Top back in 22 in that super regional. So he's got some personal experience with getting the job done against Tennessee. But the number one seed looks really strong, and the SEC looks positioned to do it again.
Well, you look at this Florida State team today, and mentioned 14 hits, and they got looks like they got 8 hits from what you would consider the bottom part of their lineup. Had 8 of the 14 hits. The 6, 7, 8, and 9 hitters, including the 9 hitter West, who went 4 for 5. So top of the order had 3 hits. So when you got down to going through the bottom of the order, they were having guys on base from 6 on through and then back to the top of the order. So it tells you something about the depth of their offense, at least today, with that kind of strength at the bottom of their order.
You're 100% on target. You remember it was a 2-run game in the 9th inning for those who were watching, and West in the 9-hole and Williams, the leadoff guy, hit back-to-back home runs, one into the left field bullpen, one into the right field bullpen, and that created the separation that allowed Florida State to not have what happened to them against Tennessee the other night happen again. Remember, but for a check swing, and that's been one of the major points of conversation out here this week, but for a check swing that was not, Florida State had Tennessee beat. And the Vols rallied for that crooked number in the bottom of the 9th inning to walk Florida State off when they played head-to-head. So, a check swing away from being in an opposite role where Tennessee would have had to come back through and beat Florida State twice. Now the Noles are in the position where they got to take care of business against Tennessee a couple of times at some point across the next few days. But if anybody out of that bracket can do it, you have to feel like it's Florida State, not only with the horses they have and the way they played all year, but also, as you said, the production they're getting top to bottom in the order right now, alongside of the guys in the middle of the order like Ferrer, who just had a tremendous tournament. I mean, Jaime Ferrer's been everything Florida State could have wanted and a whole lot more out here. If the guys ahead of him and the guys at the bottom of the order behind him continue to hit like that, you got to believe they'll be in a position maybe to at least force that winner-take-all into the championship round against Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. Talking College World Series here tonight on Sports Talk. Jason Patterson with us this evening from Omaha. And Jason, back to your point about the SEC Invitational in Omaha. Have you been surprised that the ACC has not put up a better fight against their SEC counterparts? Because especially teams like North Carolina, NC State was red hot coming in. All these teams obviously are hot coming into Omaha, but I thought North Carolina, with the way they were winning games, might really have a chance to make it all the way to the finals. And here they are getting bounced today.
Well, it's interesting the way the schedule broke out and the way the brackets, you know how critical those can be, Chris, which side of the brackets you're on and who you're with. The 3-team side for the ACC was the side that, oh, by the way, had the 1 seed in the tournament, Tennessee, in it, a team that swept both the regular season, a share of that at least with Kentucky, and then swept through the conference tournament to handle both the regular season and tournament crown in the SEC. So, those teams that were the strong teams out of the ACC, they kind of ended up with Tennessee on their side of the bracket. And in some close games, Tennessee prevailed. And as I mentioned, 4-0 is the mark right now for the SEC over the ACC. On the other side, NC State was red hot, but they were loaded up with SEC teams. They had a Florida team that was unranked in a sense only that they didn't have a great start to the season. I mean, you followed them closely, and that was a team that was a national runner-up a year ago and was number 2 team in the country preseason, a consensus top 5, no matter which poll you look at, and is a team that's been out here more than anybody in recent years. And Sully's team is anything but an underdog, even though they're the only one of the 8 that was not ranked coming into the College World Series. And then you put alongside of that Kentucky and Texas A&M, 2 teams that have been the upstarts in the SEC and grabbed headlines all season long. That was a tough draw for NC State. So even though they had half the field, it was still a very difficult draw for the ACC the way it broke down. And, familiarity and experience, you cannot really put a price tag on it because it's invaluable. And the SEC has shown us again why, because they do it year after year after year, they're in a position to continue to do it. They know what happens when this time of year comes, and they know what to do in this ballpark. Because Chris, you got to win a different way in this ballpark than you often do in some of those yards that you're talking about where you can just drive it out of there. You got to score many different ways to win here in Omaha, certainly since the series moved downtown. And the SEC schools, they seem to have figured out that formula in recent years.
And Jason, to that end, I like watching Kentucky play. I think they're a fun baseball team to watch. They've got speed. They've got some pop in their lineup if necessary. They tried to pull off a squeeze yesterday that was ultimately overruled because of the throw to first, got the batter out. But they seem to me to be a fun team that may be built to win in Omaha. But do you think they're good enough to get to this weekend?
Well, that's the only time we'll tell. I'll tell you this: they've got the town behind them, the brand of baseball they play. And you mentioned the word fun, and that really is what you think about when you watch Kentucky. I mean, this is a group that they're not going to get tight. Let's put it that way. They're going to play loose. They feel like they're in every game. They certainly proved it across the course of the regular season in the SEC. And between the likability factor of their head coach and just the enjoyment that you see from them in the dugout, and you know how it is. You guys have been out here, and you all know if the town gets in behind one of these teams and they pick a favorite, and, you know, Coach just straight made a plea on the Kentucky side of jump on our bandwagon, there's plenty of room, and Omaha has. So the one thing they're going to have going for them, not only how loose they play, which is 100% on target from your standpoint, they also have the town behind them, and we'll see what that does. The other thing that now becomes a big issue is the weather. You know, are they going to play at 10 o'clock in the morning? You know, will they be sitting around all day? You have to think a team like Kentucky's as equipped as anybody to handle that. The problem they have is immediately in front of them. You know, you almost would draw out of a hat between them and Texas A&M, even though A&M may show itself a little more powerful. The problem right in front of Kentucky right now is the Florida Gators, the team that has been there, done that, played for the title last year, has come up through this elimination side of the bracket before the way they're trying to do right now. So it really is going to be that loose, fun, wide-eyed first time, let it all hang out versus the experienced veteran. Cags is on our side. Let's see what happens. That's going to be the battle that happens whenever we get back to baseball.
Yeah, when we get back to baseball, Jason, give us the schedule as it lines up right now so that we have an idea of what we're looking at tomorrow again.
Well, what they say, Phil, is they plan to play at 10 o'clock in the morning. And if they play at 10 in the morning, it will be that Kentucky versus Florida game.
Okay.
And as you know now, that's for the right to get back to Texas A&M, the team that's in the driver's seat on that side of the bracket. With Florida State winning just a little bit ago, they now have to defeat Tennessee twice to prevent the Vols from getting to the championship round. And that the first of those games would be the 2 o'clock game tomorrow. And then here's the tricky part for Tennessee, or for Kentucky or Florida. Whoever wins that 10 o'clock game in the morning, if the weather holds, assuming the radar shapes up a little bit from where it is right now, whoever wins that game will have to turn around and play the first of those semifinal games against Texas A&M tomorrow night. So basically, you got the one side that is Texas A&M waiting on a winner between Kentucky and Florida, and you got the other side that's set, and it's Florida State and Tennessee.
Yeah.
The Noles would have to beat the Vols twice. Somebody's got to beat A&M twice to keep that from being the head-to-head matchup for the championship. But the plan is 10, 2, of course, Eastern time, we're talking 11, 3, and then that last game stays at 7 p.m. tomorrow night, weather permitting.
Tell you what, if the weather holds up, you're a baseball fan, you got a full day of it tomorrow. Before we let you go, Tennessee was my pick going in. How good have they looked in their 2 games that you've seen?
Locked in. I mean, Tennessee, you know what they're capable of. You've seen them up close and personal, Phil, and everybody has. I mean, that 22 team was really something special, but since then they laid a foundation, even though that group didn't get here to Omaha. They laid a foundation that they just built upon toward what seems to be an inevitable championship at some point year after year under Tony Vitello. The one thing you notice, whether you're sitting in the press conference with them, whether you're walking around the field as they're emptying out of the dugout and getting ready to take it prior to these games, it is a locked-in look and a locked-in approach. And with the way guys like Moore are hitting it and what they have from an arms standpoint and the fact that their arms are now lined up because they've gone through that top winners side of the bracket and have not had to fight back through the elimination side of the bracket, won't be fighting back through the elimination side of the bracket. Be hard to turn your back on Tennessee right now. That's a group that not only do they have that hunger, you see that from Florida State as well, which is very interesting. So that's going to make it for a tremendous matchup. You got to remember, Noles have been out here 23 times, and as much as we love 11 and miss Mike Martin, this is a group that never claimed the title. Link was a shortstop out here in Omaha. He's been here as a shortstop for Mike Martin. He's been here as a dad with JT on the NC State roster, and now he's here with his alma mater after bringing Notre Dame here a couple of years ago. So he knows the drill, all the ins and outs, has seen it from all angles. If anybody's kryptonite for Tennessee, I point back to what he and Notre Dame did to them a couple of years ago. He's the guy. So that makes that very interesting, the matchup itself. But Tennessee still has to be the favorite. After all, they got the one beside their name. I'll leave you with this, though, Phil. Nobody since '99, not since the turn of the century, has won this tournament with the 1 seed beside their name. They're trying to do something that has not been done in over 2 decades. We'll see if Tennessee's strong enough to get the job done.
Jason, great stuff, man. Appreciate it. Maybe we'll catch up with you the latter part of the week as we go into the weekend and see if we're going to crown a champion here before too long. But enjoy your time there in Omaha. I know that you do. Probably hit the Drover a couple of times, maybe one of those nice Italian places. If you see Joe Moglia walking around downtown Omaha, checking out one of his banks or something, tell him we said hello.
We're going to do our best. You guys enjoy the baseball. Look forward to being back with you all again soon.
Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, Jason Patterson actually lives in the upstate and does a lot of freelance play-by-play and heads out to Omaha every year. And you can tell that he is well-versed in the ways of Omaha when it comes to the College Baseball World Series.
How about that stat? I'd forgotten about that, about the number 1 seed and their struggles in Omaha. It's amazing.
Tells you how tough it is to win that championship.